Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. It's me again, Khalid bin Muhammad Ariff from Sekitar Synergy Sindirian Berhad, uh, Johor Bahru, Malaysia. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, subscribers. Thank you, all the viewers and those experts who have commented in my videos. I appreciate it so much. Okay, before we begin looking into this video, again, my reminder to all my Muslim counterparts all over the world, if you're in the mosque and in Friday, waiting for the Khatib's khutbah, or you are in any religious lessons, events, please uh, pay attention to those religious events and not watch my video. Thank you very much. Okay, today is 28th Rabiul Awal, 14 November 2020. I'm blessed with another day with my life, and I hope I'm able to do something for all, for everybody interested in environmental management, vis-a-vis safety, health, environmental management, and hopefully this would benefit you and me. Okay, now this video we are well, I am attempting to link all the concerns of safety, health, and environment with respect to an activity which is, I think, quite popular all over the world, especially those countries involving in the extraction and other downstream processes with regards to the oil and gas. Now, flaring is an activity. Now, let's take a look. Flaring is an activity. It can be an activity, one of the process involved in the offshore oil rigs, inland oil rigs, and also you can see this flaring occurring or installed for downstream facilities of the oil and gas, from polyethylene right up to, yeah, all those processing of naphtha, etc. And it is actually, flaring is actually a safety element. Flaring is an activity for relieving accumulated gases which would pose pressure, and it has got to be relieved, and especially when they have got all these off-spec materials that they have processed inside probably a petrochemical plant. And in this picture was taken years ago, and it was actually a startup of this petrochemical complex, and it is actually producing downstream oil and gas products. In this case, if I'm not mistaken, is polypropylene, polyethylene, and they just set up this facility, and for months they have this problem that they got to flare off-spec products that they have produced. Now let's take a look at the link of safety, health, and environment from this activity. Now, as you know, I am not the expert of safety and health. I have a little bit of knowledge and experience accumulated over 36 years only in environmental management. But while doing those work, my indulgence in industrial activities especially has prompted me, or I am blessed to have met experts in safety and health, uh, from whom I learn about safety and health, to couple it, to have a comprehension of how safety, health, and environment is linked. Okay, let's begin with one of the environmental aspects from this activity. There's an array of environmental aspects involved in this flaring activity itself. The most prominent environmental aspect is the stack structure system, the stack system itself, the entire structure from the burner, from the tip right up to the entire the tubes, even steam lines and everything, and even products that goes through it. There is a numerous number of equipment involved in a flare. I am not the expert. If you are in this line, you know this better than I do. And for an environmentalist, the concern is the environmental aspect of concern, as you could see, is the picture itself showing the fire, the flame. And other than the flame, you've got this, the smoke. This is some sort of a peculiar sight of a flare, because normally in a flare you don't see smoke, right? And this has got to do with probably combustion. Okay, the ratio of the three elements of combustion is not stoichiometric. You know that better than I do. Now let's talk about the flare. The flare, how does it affect safety? Let's take a look. Look, please help me out, if especially if you are working in this field, you know this well enough to enlighten me. I'm still learning until this day. The flare is about the combustion or the burning of petrochemical, say in this instance, off-spec petrochemical products. They've got to flare it out, otherwise they've got to store it in the spear vessel, pressurized vessel, which is actually another hazard. So in terms of safety, the flare itself is a hazard, and the hazard associated with it is probably the release of some unburned streams of gases. Okay, and the fact that this flare is hot, it is heating the entire radius of the region, and probably depending on the wind direction, it would cause some form of radiant heat around the area. And well, this is going to be some significant environmental impact, but not quite seen by our naked eye. And another safety concern is this one I learned from the engineer, because when we would do auditing to this plant, I had the luxury to learn from the maintenance engineers who were working, and he explained to me that this flare is a fluid movement. Uh, it's a gas fluid movement, and it is a limited sort of open loop. And there is a certain pressure that they have got to set for the fluid to flow and to burn properly. Properly. And when intrusion from external sources, such as activities involving maintenance, outsourced maintenance, they might have to replace certain gadgets. I do not know what it is specifically, but that would lead to the intrusion of air from outside, from the ambient air into the system, and that would cause air ingress. Please enlighten me. And that would cause some effects to the combustion itself. So that is another hazard according to them. Not my expertise, but this is what I learned. And there's another hazard: explosion can occur due to all these intrusions and all other irregularities of spec, operating criteria, etc. And that is a condition, safety condition, which is hazardous and would lead to health problem, especially workers exposed to so-called, for example, the radiant heat, and that would cause some heat stress. And for explosions, we could have there are cases of fatality, and also the occurrence of the incomplete combustion of materials. It could be spread, it becomes fugitive of volatile organics in the air and would cause some intoxication to people around the area, not just workers in this facility, but around the area. And in cases of injury and fatality, we have got to deploy personnel, medical personnel to the site, and maybe some of in more serious conditions, uh, we need to deploy a medical aid from outside. And for that reason, for that rescue reason, they have to come with vehicles burning fossil fuel and emissions into the air. And as those vehicles and personnel come with all the equipments, they have to do some medical management of the situation, and would release some form of environmental aspect that would become solid waste or medical waste and would cause associated environmental impact. Now, as far as the reverse order is concerned, excuse me, the flare would cause, as we mentioned just now, would cause some form of health effects to not only the worker but the surrounding area, in the form of heat radiance, and it would impact people around the area in the form of heat stress. And also when it is flaring, I was there, and I could feel the ground is vibrating vigorous. It is felt over 1 kilometer, and we can, when you are near the site, we can hear the sound of the flare. And even some of the factories, which is situated around 100 to 250 meters away from this facility, we can have vibration, and some of the glass window even crack for that vibration. So it's not just about the vibration, but I think there is an external pressure. It's a physical pressure. Could be well explained by engineers who are experts in thermodynamics, and please enlighten us in this video. And that health would cause heat radiant, and a person who is injured may have may not be able to follow closely all the safety procedures, and by virtue of that might cause some form of accident, or can cause some form of off-spec operating criteria, maybe leading to the release of unwanted emissions from that work, and that would release other types of environmental aspects that would be an impact to the environment. So there we are. It's a whole circle of linkages. Safety health officers, industrial hygienists, petroleum engineers, petrochemical engineers, industrial chemists, industrial chemical engineers. Those who have worked would know much better than this and are able to link much better than this. I'm just giving a holistic overview of how safety, health, environment is related. Now let's go to the next part, which is actually my cake in terms of environment. So let us explain a little bit to give you the idea of how the environmental management of this activity, flaring, is carried out. Let's take a look. All right, let's discuss about flare. Flare is that fire which is being lit up. It's the fire which is being lit up, and that flare is an environmental aspect, but the question is it an input or an output environmental aspect? Because we have to determine its associated environmental impact when we are doing the aspects impact register. Remember the dashboard I mentioned? Now, I prefer to work with the dashboard. I prefer that. Now, flare is an output aspect. Therefore, its impact would be viewed by looking downstream of its life cycle perspective. In other words, we got to question what happened to the flare, what the flare would pose in terms of environmental threats. So one of the most important thing impact is normally air pollution. Okay, and also the flare cause some form of thermal radiation. This is a concern to ecologists. Okay, and this thermal radiation has changed a lot of biochemical processes in the human body, has caused a lot of biochemical, zoological, botanical changes of the trees and animals. And on top of that, it has caused, most importantly, some deviation, some additional equation to the stoichiometry of a state of equilibrium of our air, of our ambient air. It has provide an input, which is the heat from the flare, and has caused, from my studies, some effects to the hydrological cycle. Hydrological cycle of, I mean, the water cycle, in that area is being affected. And when this flare is continuous, if it is one flare, can you imagine a few flares in the area? And from researchers, they have found some form of deviation in the populations of birds, and also including migratory species of birds, which has been flying across the region for decades, and they have seen some change in pattern of the flying path. And this has been highlighted in some articles, interesting, that I've read, and this has what we call a form of avionic distortion, because in their life cycle, in their some of these birds are migratory species, and even it has caused some local avionics of birds and animals to have changed in their habitat. They have got to move away from the area, for the intense heat is no longer bearable to these animals. And these are all affecting environmental ecological system, namely the inhabitants of the ecosystem. And that is an environmental impact, but we seldom use it in our ISO 14001 environmental management system. I hope you still remember the definition of environmental management system, ISO 14001 version 2015. Remember that? Environmental management system is managing environmental aspect. The flare is an environmental aspect now. How to manage it? Fulfill compliance obligations. Fulfill compliance obligations. Don't you think that we got to fulfill these ecological obligations? And also address risk and opportunities. That is environmental management system ISO 14001. Please check out the definition. And there are other environmental aspects which we can take a look here. In this case is the off-spec product from the facility itself, and it is an input aspect into this activity, which is flaring. They are the reason why the flare is there, and it is an upstream. The impact to the environment from off-spec product is, since they are input material, we got to look upstream of the life cycle perspective, and thus causes these are all from oil. The more demand, the more the off-spec product is being released, the more demand for oil and gas. And resource depletion is the environmental impact. And also, of course, as you know by now, the more drilling into the bedrock structure, we are going to damage that valuable bedrock structure and causes a permanent damage to the bedrock structure. Another environmental aspect of interest is the use of steam to control the combustion equilibrium, and steam is an input aspect, and the steam comes from a boiler. And with steam, we are able to remove the black smoke that come out from this flare, because steam would provide moist. And I think chemical engineers, please correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, steam would provide some form of wet oxidation, providing, the water split and boost the combustion and enhance the stoichiometric equation so that the combustion doesn't lead to black smoke, meaning promoting complete combustion of this off-spec product. And steam is an input. Therefore, we got to look at the upstream of steam, which comes from the boiler, which is heated up by fuel burning burner. And fuel is used again, causing resource depletion and, as you know, geological damage, as discussed earlier. So let's take a look at the risk part. What have we got for risk for this activity? Of course, there is legal liability involved. It is wrong to release black smoke from the stack, even though it is after the fire, the flare, and there is a clause in the law to prohibit it. Okay, and other liability would be neighbors, public dwellers, perhaps living like 1 to 3 kilometer radius from this area. Ironic, isn't it? And they may they may do some legal action on their capacity. And there are other bioreceptors around those areas which is affected by this flare. And those are risks associated to this flaring. And of course, for the part of the company itself, these are all actually material resources which is dispersed into the air and burnt as flare. These are all money. These are all raw mats which has been mixed and set and processed but doesn't meet the product standard. They have got to inevitably flare it out. It's a material loss. So those are the risks. And there are opportunities as far as my interest is concerned. Some of the facilities is having cogen tapping the heat. In fact, tap the fire to boil boilers and generate steam, and thus provide heat source and turn turbines and generate electrical energy. That is a plus point. And also some of the parts I saw when they were doing what you call maintenance, the burning tip, correct me if I'm wrong, what do you call it, flare tip, they have changed the what do you call it, thermocouple. I'm not the expert, and those are metals which are recyclable, so those are opportunity as far as environmental management system. Or perhaps if I'm them, I would probably refurbish and make a recon sort of equipment, recon flare tip, recon, thermocouple, repair it. Why throw it out as waste? And of course, there's opportunity for a better environmental design for this facility, which is ongoing now. And maybe I don't even know about it because I didn't keep up with the knowledge about flaring. And I believe now there are better facilities as far as flaring is concerned. If you are the younger generations, you are blessed with all this opportunity to have better systems working for you. Thank you very much for your time. As a Muslim, I wish in bahasa Melayu semoga dikurniakan keselamatan, kesejahteraan, kebahagiaan, kejayaan, kehidupan di dunia dan di akhirat for all of you. Thank you very much for watching. Until we meet in the next video, I wish everybody Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.